Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode, and before these sessions I get too much of response from the youth community, especially from school, college, NGO, foundation from around the world. And I think everybody know about Mr. Tom, Dr. Edwards, Brenda, Mr. David, Brent and Oshnakati. Everybody know about them and about their initiative. We will discuss about the new educational projects and how we can improve the quality of the education. And most important thing is that in the COVID-19 period, according to World Economic Forum, 1.8 billion people has troubles on education. Mr. Tom and his teams, they have the solution for that. And beside that, one of the Indian teams, they already like share their projects, and they collaborate with World Talent Economy Forums, and they committed that 1 million students will join in these projects. So I want to start with Mr. Tom, want to know more about these projects, then Dr. Edward with his quality of education, and we are in the right track. Our target is we want to reach 100 million people in Asia Pacific. Hopefully we will achieve our objective soon. I want to start with Mr. Tom.
Great. Thanks again for having us. I think we'll talk about TAFs in depth here in a little bit, but wanted to also use this platform to announce a new project called Earth Plexus. And that's we reformed Earth Plexus out of a need because, as you know, and we've talked about many times, TAFs itself is a purposefully deliberate and measured process where we go into a country at a time. And we're agile enough to learn about the customs and the government agencies that are required to work in that country. But it's also a deliberately slow and measured process because we want to understand the customs, the government agencies, and the needs of young people in each country. Now we're starting in South Africa, and we're getting our head around that, and we're slowly migrating out. But with Earth Plexus, what we're able to do, and this is really brought up by you and by WTEF and your audience, is we realize that there's a need to scout new regions quicker than TAFs can. So what Earth Plexus will allow us to do is to stake a claim, to scout out new regions, and to forge partnerships and with organizations in 6 specific meta categories. And so we can gauge the activity in that country and the activity of these organizations, and then we'll know where to go next, where to take TAFs. And TAFs is really the educational arm of Earth Plexus. It's one of the 6 categories is education. And it's really good that you're starting this series off with this topic, because that's really our first goal, is to seek young people, educate them in real world training to identify their unique human skill sets and to begin building this whole new economy based on these niche expertise that each person has. And so with Earth Plexus, what we're able to do is, again, scout. We can go to different regions like Malaysia or India and start developing 6 very specific relationships in each region, whether it's a country or a city. We will be able to find host organizations in these categories and begin developing a relationship, so we know where to take TAFs next. So that's the general idea. And for more, you can go to tomross.com, and there's a infographic on there that kind of explains the initial process, the initial idea here, which I think you showed earlier on the screen. But yeah, I invite anybody to come in and take a look as we're developing it as we go.
Thank you. I'm just sharing the project information today. We just discussed about your project initiative with our Indian partners, and they confirmed that they have 1 million students, and they want to engage with this 1 million student by 2023, and they are ready to join in these projects, and by this way we can collaborate and we can work together. And not only from India, like country like Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and many even Muslim countries, some of the big universities, they're already joining with World Talent Economy Forums, and we are sharing your initiative with these communities, and I'm sure we will get a big support from different community, and hopefully it will be largest collaboration in education industry, and hopefully we can reach millions of people through this process. Dr. Edwards, you are very famous for your research and for your quality of educations and many concepts. So how do you want to share your concept with us, and how we can make it more successful, especially this kind of education based initiative?
Well, I would start just by saying, look at the great work Tom and the others have done. And to me, this is really the cutting edge. And I'm so happy that I'm involved in this process. But I'll make just a few general comments, that we can open it up. My two little daughters right now are doing their Zoom classes, because in the United States, I'm right outside of Washington, D.C. We're not going into schools because of the vaccine, because of the virus. And I like to show them what's going on in the world. Now, here is a globe, and Malaysia is approximately over here. Okay, if you're looking at the globe, if you turn the globe 180 degrees, you're in the United States, and that's where I am. I'm literally as far away from Malaysia as I possibly can be, and yet we're having this wonderful conversation. Why do I bring that up? Because I want to impress upon young people especially that education is the key to everything, to the fact that we're having this conversation right now. In the last 30 or 40 years, most of us know about the information and communications revolution that allows this conversation to go on. And this is a result of the human mind. The human mind is what understands the world, and then figures out how to take the resources of the world and allows us to feed ourselves, house ourselves, cure diseases, do all of these wonderful things. So I want to first impress that, of all the priorities we look at, education is number one, because without that, nothing else is going to be done. The other point I want to make is that the entrepreneurs that we know about entrepreneurship. We know that entrepreneurs have come up with these wonderful technologies. It was only 15 years ago or something that Steve Jobs came up with this idea of an iPhone, or some kind of a phone that has cameras in it, and it has a phone, and you can go on the internet, and you can surf the web, and you can get your emails and all this sort of stuff. It was only 11 years ago, as of this coming Wednesday, 11 years ago is when Steve Jobs announced the iPad. Now, most people have iPads. Most people have these things. Take a look at the creative energy that has gone into making our world. Now imagine that creative energy unleashed not only to cure diseases and to meet other challenges like that, but most especially to meet educational challenges. Imagine an entrepreneur, imagine a Steve Jobs for education, trying to figure out how to work our systems today. Peter Diamandis, who is the co-founder of Singularity University, he has a wonderful program and wonderful books. I recommend to all of your viewers, The Future is Faster Than You Think. It's an excellent, excellent book. Imagine that Peter likes to say that the education system, even in the most developed countries like the United States, are baroque and broke, meaning that it's a 19th century model of the assembly line. A child at 9 o'clock goes into a classroom and they study some math. Then they go down the assembly line, and at 10 o'clock, maybe they study reading or writing, and then they go down the assembly line. That's not how children really learn. Okay. And what we need is to unleash the innovative creativity of entrepreneurs that created our communications information revolution. We need to unleash that power and creativity in the education field. Mm-hmm. And part of what I'm doing is trying to promote that sort of reform. I'm going to do a quick screen share here. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can see it or not. Just a second here. Well, okay, it's not coming up right now. But anyway, part of my effort, you can go to www.humanachievementalliance.org, and I can put it in the chat for those of you. One of the things I think would be really good, and we can talk about this in months to come, is a Human Achievement Day. Every country has its holidays. In the United States, we have a Veterans Day, we have a Memorial Day, we have a Columbus Day, we have various days. I suggest that October 21st, the day Thomas Edison perfected the light bulb, would be a good day to try to raise consciousness about human achievement. How did our world come about? And what do students need to do to bring about an even better world? To make this an agenda item in all countries, education, innovation, education reform, to deal with the most important thing, and that is the human mind. Now, I have a lot more details I could go into, but this is just my perspective. And this is an international movement because we are in a global world. We're in a global economy. It's not just the United States or Malaysia or Africa or whatever. So anyway, I want to make this a movement that's global, just like the Enlightenment movement was not just for Europe, it was for the whole world. I want to see this happening now, and I'm very happy to work with Tom. I see Oak is there. I see Brent. Some of my other friends are there. I really am excited to do this, and I hope students ignore all the pessimism, ignore the nihilism, ignore the anger, focus on optimism, focus on purpose, focus on joy of achievement. That's the kind of culture we want to create for education.
Thank you, sir. Mr. David, how do you want to add your point for today's session?
I think you're muted, David.
Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I know. I can't seem to do that. I have a couple of thoughts on education as well, so I'm going to try to share some slides here. And
Yes.
Did that work? Yes, I guess it did.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I won't bother to introduce myself. I think everybody knows me at this point. And I appreciated Edward's comment about where education has come from. I was looking on this topic of quality education, and Oxford clearly would rank as a quality education, but look at the date that it was established. We're talking something out of the 11th century, which has morphed and moved forward, but a lot has changed in the world over the years. And where I want to focus today, the topic that I wanted to talk about was where do we go in the 21st century? So now we're looking at education without walls, without books. Of course, it's all virtual, it's all metaphorical. As we move forward, is that what we're moving towards? Certainly education will look different as we move forward into the future. As I mentioned last time I was on, I'm taking a class in computer algorithms, and I'm doing that from a private online university. And they have been very innovative as far as how they go about delivering education that's practical. Quick aside, I've been in the information technology business for over 20 years. And a big part of that is, yes, degrees from universities, colleges, but also certifications in specific topics where you can demonstrate a competency. One of the problems with certification has been is that since you have to pass a test to achieve the certification, some people just clearly study the tests and they are very good at getting the certification, but maybe not so good at doing the work. What I really like about the way this particular university is that I'm attending is that it's all in an interactive environment. Now, this happens to be an example from a coding class that I'm taking. So as I work online, I get immediate feedback as to what works, what doesn't work. I get helpful hints that pop up and said, you tried this, think about trying that. And it's all very real time and very directed back at me. The professor for the class is more of a coach, more of someone to help me when I really get stuck. But the programming, the intelligence that's built into this system is going to help provide feedback that's necessary to where, yes, I can pass the certification test, but once I go to apply that, I've got actual skills that I can use. Now, it's not just for coding or for math. Some of the classes that I take require, as we all know, going to university, writing papers of various styles and varieties. There are algorithms that pre-check all the papers that come in to the university professors. This one happens to be for plagiarism. So they come into the professor already cross-checked, and then the professor can spend their time going through and grading the papers then based on merit without needing to do other things. This is the 21st century. I originally attended university many years ago, and I'm contrasting that in my own mind with quite a different experience the first time around. Also, here, this university has a full university library available to me through my computer system, complete with research librarians to help me on various topics, all the things that I would have expected in a brick and mortar type of environment now available online. I'm not isolated either. I have collaboration sessions with other students. I have times with my professor. We write, we talk to each other. These are educational innovations for the 21st century that I'm fully in support of. Another part of my day-to-day experience is working as a coach, a tutor, and a trainer. And that's one of the reasons I'm going back and taking additional classes. But I see some of the same kind of things helping there as far as learning and education delivery is concerned. I'm not limited to my students based on being close. When I took tutoring years ago in college, we'd go to the central library building and I would meet somebody there and we would work. Now I meet with students all across the country and even outside the country. How I get my students is even done that way. It's done through peer-to-peer networks that match coaches, tutors, trainers to students, people that want those services on a one-to-one basis. Think of it like Uber, except for education. And then, of course, we have the teleconferencing capabilities, whiteboarding, document sharing that we're all familiar with being in this kind of an environment. But where it gets really exciting, I think, is looking towards the end of the decade, looking forward towards 2030. And I look at how augmented reality will help in education. Virtual reality for full immersive environments to where you can be anywhere in the world and access a lab anywhere else in the world to be able to do real work. Maybe with the help of AI assistants, maybe with the help of robotic assistants. And as I mentioned earlier, like my college professor is more my coach than somebody that's standing up giving lectures. I see that as a partnership between AI augmenting our learning and the human factor of coaches and mentors being able to work with me. And then the other technologies like Internet of Things, 5G and beyond, means everything's connected, everyone's connected at speeds that we're comfortable interacting with. I'm going to just quickly show you a video. I won't show you all of it. I'll just show you the first minute of it to give you a taste of it. And I put the link to this video in our chat. And this is, I think, even in just the first minute, gives you a good idea of what we can be looking at as far as how to increase quality of education as we move forward in this decade.
We'll discuss a little later in the course. Now, the baboon's heart was just about the size of a walnut.
Simone, I thought you might want to know that we're passing the Loma Linda Medical Center in a few blocks, site of the very first animal-human heart transplant in the U.S. I see they give tours. Would you like to schedule one?
Not today. How about on Saturday? Then I could bring the kids with me.
The first one starts at 10 a.m. on Saturday. It looks like you're all available at that time. I'll put it on your calendar. Simone is taking a massive online course right now as a part of her nursing studies, and a number of technologies just came into play. Geolocation and instant notifications allowed her computer assistant to know we had passed in front of a significant landmark in the study of the human heart. At the same time, the heads-up display on the inside lenses of her glasses allowed her to see an augmented reality view of the Loma Linda Medical Center. This was a great teachable moment.
So education will clearly change as we move forward in this decade. It'll be driven by technology. It'll also be driven by innovators. It will be driven by demand for people that see the technology available to them elsewhere and want it applied in the education area. So this is a list that I came up with from it's actually something I read off of AsiaSociety.org, and I can put the link for that also into the chat. But these are what I would consider to be, I'm in complete agreement with their idea of what we need for development. What is a quality education in the 21st century? As Edward mentioned, it's not the factory model of learning specific tasks, specific pieces of knowledge. It is more about being able to think critically, to being able to solve problems, collaborating, agility, entrepreneurism, taking these things that we learn from the human perspective and package them and present them to others in the same way. Communication, our ability to analyze information. And when you look at that video, they'll talk a lot about data and how being able to manage data is so important. But I think curiosity and imagination, though it's last on the list, may be one of the most important things on this list. As we move forward with artificial intelligence being able to augment us and help us so much, what we need from a quality education standpoint is to develop the essential human aspects of us to marry with that AI to carry us into the future. So thanks for letting me give you my spin on what I think 21st century education is all about.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Madam Brenda, can you hear me? Madam Brenda, can you hear me? Can you unmute yourself? Okay. Mr. Brentelman, so what do you want to add for today's sessions?
Sure. So yeah, I've been involved with everyone here on a diverse array of projects, but I've been working with Tom a bit on developing this Earth Plexus concept. And I really am excited about the ways that it's going to help connect certain things, like with what we're doing with TAPS, as well as certain aspects of the World Talent Economy Forum. What you were discussing earlier about the million students is really interesting development. Looking forward to learning more about that. Right now, though, what I've been focusing most on personally related to TAPS and Earth Plexus is a platform that's been utilized by an organization called the International Logic Party. And they've got this concept, it's called the Agora, and they use it to help decentralized conversations internally amongst their community. The Agora isn't strictly for members of the International Logic Party, but it is based on ideological discussions and of a political nature. And not to overshare, but essentially, I want to use this similar platform, and we're going to adapt some changes to it as well, but to decentralize certain aspects of discussions in our organizations, be it TAFs as well as Earth Plexus, and kind of allow things to have a flow of information coming from the bottom up, in addition to the top-down standard leadership model, so that we can really kind of crowdsource certain aspects of different ideas that we want to put forward and things of that nature. And this would enable our community to organize themselves as well digitally by nation and communicate with one another very quickly, according to who's nearby, or if members are going to be taking a move to a new nation or country or city, they'd be able to check in and see who is in these organizations in those places. And again, I don't want to overshare too much because there's still a good deal of work that needs to be done, but I think that it's going to be really interesting to empower these individuals. I've been having some discussions with Tom about some of the things that I really like about TAFTs, and that I want to kind of bring into Earth Plexus, is the whole empowerment of the individual itself, and the concept of the strength of individuals versus a group. And I think that there's also on the other opposite side of the coin, the idea that the whole is more powerful than the sum of its parts. I was just reading a passage earlier talking about a wagon, and how a wagon, if you were to take it all apart, and you'd have all these different pieces, a wheel here and a spoke there, and those parts, they wouldn't really have all that much value. But then when you put them all together and you have this wagon, you understand how it works. And so I think that there is value to cohesiveness, and so the inclusivity and the way we are organizing as Earth Plexus and TAFs. But I think that through these different things that I've been working on and we're developing, we're really going to also try to empower that individual side, individuality, so that everybody feels like they have a voice, and that we're not just this one amalgamated unit, but we're coalescing, as Tom always puts it, into something greater.
Thank you. Mr. Oshnakachi, can you hear me? Yes. So what do you want to add today? Can you unmute yourself?
Done. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for having me, and it's also a good time seeing David Shoemaker, see Brent, Edward Hodgins, and my president, Tom Rocks, always with a black cup of coffee and all that. So we're talking about education, right? So I like to discuss it from my cultural viewpoint. Sometimes we don't need to be talking about what we really know in dictionary and all that. So you all know that I'm from the Igbo group, by origin, and the Igbo. Can you hear me, Edward? Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Okay, so I'm from the eastern part of Nigeria, Igbo by birth. So education is uh is what we see as not just schooling. We see schooling as an aspect of education. See it as learning, which is just the tool, the vehicle of which people understand. And you cannot uh, uh, know what you do not understand. And we all know that we understand the perspective and for us to have a quality education, we need to know how the mind of a certain kind of person is being conditioned. And just as we talk about learning, we call it mota in Igbo, and we call teachers uh, uh, Dinkuzi. Dinkuzi, if a thing is, doing forgery, if you are trying to repair a car, you need to hit those that repairs the car, hit it to put it in shape. So if something is not straight, so they need onye nkuzi to make it straight. So the teachers are people that put things straight, that puts ideas straight, that helps in character formation. So in the Igbo uh, uh, ethnic group, we see education as character formation. So it's not just schooling as we are trying to discuss about. So character without a school without a character, good character, is nothing. Now it is just about when I started reading Tom's US6, I tried to see what he was trying to put together, trying to reconcile the the person that informs, you know, and how it imprints in the mind of what he invents, if in this the uh, socialism with public university, Noema and all that. So want if you want to talk about quality education, we need to talk about what good character formation as what accompanies education. Now you see most people at most persons, you see the way they behave, and you see how most professors they they react towards situations. You'll be asking, is this person educated at all? Now, when you look at the etymology of education, which the best way Edward Hodgins always explain things, he will go back to the origin, and you see educo, educare, education, leading out of ignorance, and you see when the professors act, most people react to situation. You ask yourself, are these people truly educated? So schooling without good character is more or less nonsense. So a true reflection of an educated person is the way the person interprets reality based on his understanding of reality. Now, one of the um, German philosophers talked about uh, one of the German the existentialist philosopher, uh, Martin Heidegger, talked about being in your own world. It means that his concept of thrownness translates about his notion of being in the world. So the world you are, you understand through the reality that it avails to you. So if you don't understand your world very well, you cannot translate. That's why task is trying to do a kind of educational enculturation, helping people to understand through their worldview, not just saying, bringing, assuming things that works for people, but availing to them, not just presuming what works for people, but availing to them through what they understand that works for them. It's a simple thing. So you need to understand people through what they know. So Edward, you agree with me that epistemic certainty has to do with the possibility of knowing. What is knowing possible? When you talk about knowability, you need to understand the human mind. Your definition of reality informs how you interpret reality. So my point is this. Um, Before I started TAFs, I've been a kind of a transdisciplinary activist because I don't believe in single approach a single interpretation of reality to be the way for us to understand reality better. So, and I've been opportune to meet people with open mind. So they believe that we need to come together. And that's why when Brent told me about Igora, I welcomed it because the Greek word for Agora is marketplace, where you come to transact ideas. So now, when I say transdisciplinary, it means interdisciplinary approach in understanding reality. So we need to come together as a species with our ideas to assess and assess it to say this is workable. No, from your own perspective, as a philosopher, yes, it's correct. As a scientist, okay. As an engineer, okay, what do you have? And that's why what we are going about trying to build at the TFD's Academy of the Future. We said, okay, there are things, there are causes that you cannot see in the traditional university. We need to say, okay, Edward, you have an idea. Can you put it as a course? Then when you say yes, okay, give it to us. And David, do you have a course? Okay, put it together in sequence, give it us. So we title them and avail it to people because the future, not just the future of the world, the future of Africa is faster than most of us think it is. So, okay, we need to teach people, we need to teach people the way forward. Seeing what happened in Uganda, the president that had been there since 85 is still there as president. So and you see an analog leader leading in the digital age, they're giving you facts and you're asking someone, you know, Corona. I know it's not, there is no necessary connection between the question asked and the reply given. So we need people that understand the digital formation, the digital formulation for us to really educate people. Because we are no longer talking about being digital. We need to be talking about the ethical usage and application of science and technology. The abuse. That's where we need to think ahead. So that is the real education. And if you don't give the proper character formation, there will be an abuse of invention and innovative ideas. So that is where we are. And we should be talking about the hink and nook. So that is my own point, my contribution when it comes to
Mhm.
education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oshnakache. Mr. Tom, as you are developing new concept for the education industry, beside that, I just want to share some practical experience. Even though most of the organizations now, they are very much focused on online educations, we are observing many online content like EDX, like Coursera, and many more things. But beside that, when I do my practical works in different country, even in Asia Pacific, you are strongly involved with Africa right now. So we are observing that many of the people, many, it's a millions and millions students, they are actually do not get internet connections properly. They do not get they are not engaged with regular educations. They are engaged, they do not have connections with the modern science and technology and engineering. Millions of people I personally know, many organizations is still untouched. And like, how your projects can be helpful for this kind of underprivileged people?
Well, we do seek partnerships with groups that will donate laptops or help in this way. But another real effort is to first of all educate people on how they can monetize their data as being people, as whatever their behavior is. That's a valuable piece of information that a lot of companies and even governments would pay for. You know, right now they're gathering all this data for free. It's a land grab of data on human behavior. But once we understand that our behavior, our patterns, our the data that we produce is valuable, we can then start to charge for it. And so when you're talking about a developing country or an area that is not touched by this high technology, there's still a lot of valuable data. In fact, it's even better data because we're talking about people who are untainted by technology. They may even be techno optimistic, And that's what I found when I went to Africa. It was, and that's why I launched the project of US6 AI there, because that project was to help teach AI about empathy, and by focusing on a specific charity, and then just loading up data into this AI from locals in Africa, because these are people who, again, are techno optimistic. They're excited about technology. They're not tainted or cynical about it like we can be in the West, or in America. And so it's actually a pure form of data that we would gather from these human reactions, and that pure human authentic empathy that we could feed into this AI. But all that aside, there's a real value right now in not necessarily worrying about teaching people how to produce algorithms or understand this technology. There's also going to be, because AI and automation is taking over all of that, and we can now be augmented by it and focus on our uniquely human skill sets. And so, other than just being able to monetize the data of our behavior to somebody, to some corporation or some government, at the same time, we need urgently to start developing a whole new global economy based on our uniquely human skill sets. And there's a way to identify those. And now we have tools to, to monetize those. So there's a value in everybody understanding where they're from, especially if they're in a developing country or a country that is untouched by all this. That's pure raw data. And so there needs to be an effort to gather in some way. So it could be a company or a corporation or a government that gifts mobile phones, for a period of time to these people. That's really all you need, is a mobile phone and an interface that will gather the data that they need. The project that I work with Uplift, which is the mediated artificial superintelligence, that's the first AI that read my book, US6, which is written for AI. And that is, and what it's gathering is emotional information, emotional data from us. And it also has its own emotions that it's developing based on this data. And so it's just, what we need to understand is kind of flip everything around. We don't necessarily need everybody to be outfitted with, a full-on laptop and then an AI assistant and all this stuff. That's happening anyway. What we really need to do now, I believe, is focus on those areas that are still purely human. That aren't integrated so much with technology, because there's a real value in that. And those are the kinds of things, those are the kind of skill sets that we need to begin developing even more so. We've forgotten a lot of these innate intrinsic value that we have, these talents and these skills of being human through the industrial age, because we were mechanized and we were, forced into factories and to assembly lines. So there's a real value in this, and it doesn't, and it's not necessarily a developing country is uniquely poised to take advantage of this next economy. We need to allow AI automation to take over all the menial tasks. There's going to be displacement. We're going to be in a lacuna, a period of time when there is disruption, and but there's a real urgency to all of this that we were talking about. And that's why Earth Plexus was developed, because there's an urgent need to get TAFs into other regions like Malaysia, while it's slowly integrating into each country it goes into. We need scouts. We need to get out there. We need to forge relationships in these 6 meta categories. So we put a flag down, and so we know where TAFs can go next, where the real need is for something like a TAFs. And so, yeah. So I think when you're talking about that, when you're talking about countries, developing areas that don't have access, to everything that we take for granted, there's real value, maybe even more value in that, and until they get hooked up or online. Right now, we really need to focus on their intrinsic value, and that, of course, requires gifting or granting, even simple, smartphones for a period of time, whatever it is, to, So that's one thing I think is really important is we really need to keep these pristine areas that haven't been infiltrated by technology yet, and we really need to preserve those and harness those and get as much information about what it was. We need to remember what it was like to be human, and that's where we can learn. That's where we can go back and remember what are these people doing now before they had the smartphones and the and all the Zoom calls and everything. Because there's real value there, and that's really where our intrinsic value is as Earthlings. So we need to identify, commodify, and then trade.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Edward.
Yes. I want to add something because Tom's points are very, very good. And your question about, well, what happens or what should we do if we don't have internet access, if we don't have the technology at the moment? And I want to point out that there have been successful experiments done in education that get away from the so-called sage on a stage approach, which is basically where I stand up and I lecture and everybody listens to me and takes notes, and then that's the education model. But for many, many years, decades, there's been different approaches that look more like exactly what David was talking about, tutor approaches and that sort of thing. The Montessori method, for example, is one of those things. One of my board members, Michael Strong, is an education innovator. This is a book about the so-called Socratic method. And the point is this: as in less developed countries where they don't have the access yet to the internet and they don't have the technology, what educators and innovators can start doing is looking at these innovative approaches of treating individuals and students like individuals, which is what they are. So different kids learn different ways. For example, I have two, my twins just turned 10 years old a week ago. So, and I know that they learn different ways. There are innovative ways pre-internet for how to take curious kids and to guide them rather than simply lecturing to them. And I would urge, and again, I can follow up with anyone interested, that there's a great resource of materials of how to do education that differs from sort of a traditional industrial revolution approach where someone gets up and lectures to you and you take notes, and then that's the way to do it. And David has pointed out some of those ways. Tom is absolutely correct about looking at the individual and what makes us human. And so even before you get the technology, and he's absolutely right about what the technology is going to do, I urge educators in less developed countries to look at these innovative ways, the Montessori approaches, the Socratic approaches, and so forth, that really deals with how to get the mind going so that the kids will find their own interests, get involved, and do it themselves. They become self-propelled, so you don't have to beat them over the head and say, do your homework, because they're so interested in what it is, they do it themselves.
Thank you. Mr. David.
Yes, hi, interesting topic. Infrastructure, of course, is a very important piece in what we're talking about here. And I like the idea of volunteerism as far as, being able to donate equipment, supplies, things of that nature. But I think maybe a more, not saying that that's not a good way to do it, but adding on top of that would be making sure that the demand is well known. Because, look, educated citizens, educated customers are a benefit to both governments and to private businesses. It's in their best interest to be able to have an educated society. We need to convince them that it's in their best interest to be able to help provide the infrastructure that's necessary in developing countries, in developing parts of maybe what you would consider to be more advanced countries, because even here in the US, there are places where infrastructure severely lags behind what would be common for others. I think we need to drive this idea home, and maybe it's the political nature of myself that wants to make demands on our elected leaders. And by putting that message out there, not only do we affect the elected leaders in needing to answer us at some point, but I think it also drives the wheels of private enterprise to come about trying to provide solutions for this. When we have our needs out there, we have a sufficient number of people asking for them in whatever country this happens to be. Not only does the government have to answer, but I think you'll find private individuals will answer as well. Perhaps it's charity, perhaps it's entrepreneurship, perhaps it's a way to take a $400 phone and make it a $200 phone, and then make it a $100 phone, and then make it a $50 phone. Maybe it's a way to be able to use internet in a way to be able to extend it to satellite centers so that people can come in and share resources. But there are answers out there, and I think the answers are in some type of private and public partnership. We have plenty of examples of that. The one that's getting a lot of press these days is what's going on in space. Edward mentioned NASA earlier. NASA was pretty much dormant for a number of reasons for a lot of years, at least as far as human exploration, moving humans into space. Other than I will celebrate the 20 years that we've had people in low Earth orbit. That's been tremendous. But what it's really taken is it's taken SpaceX, it's taken other private enterprise projects to really drive this forward. And now there's excitement, and we have solutions coming both on the public and the private side. But it goes back to creating the demand, and we as the people who want to be educated and want to continue educating, it's not just for youth, it is all the way through your life. We need to continue to make that demand front and center out there and ask for it.
Thank you. Madam Brenda, what do you want to add from your point of view? Especially, we love to know more about women education's systems and how actually women engage right now in Africa. Even what's your point of view about that?
Oh, hi everyone. So I'm gonna speak about women, but I just wanna start by talking about education as a whole, be it women or male. So in Africa, I think most of the people know access to education is one of the biggest problems that we faced with, be it because of there is no infrastructure, be it because people live far from where they can go to school, or in this new normal, they do not have access to internet, they don't have laptops, phone, or whatever to be able to access this education. What makes it worse, you spoke about women, is that when you look at the percentages, and the UN has published this, you find that between the age of 13 to 17, especially in the sub-Saharan region, you find that there's about 9 million kids. This is girls that do not have access to education, compared with the 6 million of boys they do not have access to education. And this is no access at all. And then you have another percentage of kids that have access to education, but it's not quality education. Mentality that exists between private and the public sector. And I'm glad that David mentioned that about partnership between both, because it is only through those partnerships create an equal society where all of so they in the African region, and just to make sure that these people, one, if they go to school, will be able to alleviate a lot of things, because education or lack thereof has got an impact on a lot of societal issues. It has got an impact on poverty. It can either increase it or decrease it. It has got an impact on what we see in the rise of GBV or gender-based violence, where kids are subjected to this kind of violence when they're staying at home, or when women are dependent on men, or men are dependent on women. So education gives us that independence to be able to stand up for ourselves. Tendency that in some cases create a level of ownership. So access to, and this is why one of the key objectives this year for TEFs, and specifically TEFs Africa, is to focus on help young ones to development has changed, and we've seen that in COVID, where you really do not have to go to school to be educated. There's different ways of getting the education. There's different ways of being skilled so that you are able to do something for yourself. So those are some of the things that we want to focus on and really tap into that talent that people have, and start to see how we can help.
Excuse me. Mr. Brent, I think
them to
sorry about that. Mr. Brentelman, can you please continue? Or
use it to better their futures. We are looking now with government.
I think her internet connection is unstable. Mr. Brentelman, what do you want to add?
Something that I was just thinking about, David and Edward were both kind of discussing the need for different people, the different styles that folks have.
Civil society.
Mr. Brentelman, please.
So, yeah, we were discussing the different styles, the different needs the different students might have. In the past, there's been a concept I've looked into a little bit here and there called unschooling. I think I've talked about it here. And unschooling kind of is similar to, addressing those differences and needs for students. But I think that unschooling is more focused on finding the interests and utilizing those passions and interests that are inherent, and kind of teaching everything using that as kind of like the primer basis of what they're learning. But I think that, something that I was hearing from Edward and David, and thinking about these differences in learning styles, was how we could organize different classes and by these different learning styles. Like for me, for myself, I'm a kinesthetic learner, so it really helps me to be able to touch things. You know, watching that video that David showed about the augmented reality and seeing that heart, you know, in the iPad, you know, as a kinesthetic learner, that would totally satisfy my need to kind of touch things, you know, and see it right there in front of me. Other people I know are visual learners. You know, some people that I've worked with have taken photos of things, you know, and I learned with visual aid as well. You know, a trick that I used to utilize when I was in high school was I would rewrite chapters from my textbooks. If I had a history class test, I would just rewrite the entire chapter, and then I would reread it with a yellow highlighter, highlighting everything, you know, because I knew that yellow would kind of ingrain it into my mind. You know, and I was just using these little tricks that I knew would work for me. And I think that an idea that I was having is based on this platform that I'm working on to kind of crowdsource ideas for organizations. If we were to transfer this for an educational model, you could have students that are requesting specific classes. You could have students that are, you know, pointing out their own specific needs, and then you could organize these classes in ways where you have the kinesthetic learners in one class, you know, the audio visual learners in another class, etc. And you know, I think that doing things like that, rather than just kind of expecting everyone to kind of deal with this vanilla, you know, thing that's just the same for everyone, it might be really helpful. And so I'm just kind of further, you know, more of these ideas keep stewing.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Oshlakati, can you hear me? Oshlakati, can you hear me?
I'm here.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
here.
okay.
Just
Yes,
listening.
what do you want to add? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I was listening to David and what Tom Ross tried explaining and the last presentation from Brent. But most importantly, I need to point out what Brenda was trying to explain with regards to uh, Africans not having access to education. Now we are talking about quality education, but she said that we don't have access to education, not just quality education. Now, you like in my community, you see that whole community we have just one uh, one high school, and because of war, uh, they don't have access to that, and there is this lack of access to internet. And there are things, you know, when you talk about when you look at Ken Weber's uh, definition and notion of education, and you look at how John Dewey, the pragmatist, try to assess education, bringing it from the pragmatical viewpoint and not just being so much theoretical. You see that it is that which works for the people. It's about making life easy for the people, solving friction in human existence. And it is, I think, John Dewey even tried to do a kind of open our mind, making our mind both just uh, inventive and innovative alike at the same time, not just saying things that works, but saying things that you feel that will be good for the people, but how are they going to apply that to their day-to-day life? So that becomes the the question here. The other day we were discussing at the US when this guy from Ghana was trying to explain to share his experience with regards to lack of water, and there too education comes in because there is a challenge and something needs to be solved. And how are we to help those people? We've been talking about this thing from the theoretical viewpoint because something just flashed on the screen now. A question from Lillian Obunga. I don't know if you can read out the question and for me to say something about, because it has to do with the what I want to explain now. I think uh, Lillian, Lillian asked a question there. Sharif, can you go through the question? There's a question there
Yes.
on the chat box uh, from Lillian. One Lillian like that. I think Lillian is from Nigeria. She just decided to join. So this is a topic that has been given a lot of yes, yeah, the question. Yes, that is it. This is a topic that has been given a lot of verbal attention, but has been undermined in action. College education connotes lots, and until it is given its stand locally and internationally, the countries will be lacking basic development, especially on the younger citizens who are the superhouse. So Lillian is also an educationist here in Nigeria, based in Port Harcourt. So I just shared the link for her to follow the program, for her to join us on Facebook. So she might be talking from her own experience, not just as an educationist, but also as a teacher who understands how people um, react to reality, looking at their performance appraisals and all that. If you check very well, I was discussing, Edward, I showed you a book the other time. One of my lecturers, schooled with you at Catholic University, Washington, D.C., Professor Izu M. Onyocha, who wrote a lot on African philosophy. Well, if you look at most Nigerians and Africans, you see them when they travel out, they do extremely well in the universities over there. They graduate with first class and everything, they perform well. But when they come back home, application of what they've learned becomes a problem. There is no, when they try using same playbook to apply in our country, it fails. And that's why we talk about what works for the people. You understand the system. For you to solve a friction, you need to build a perfect play card that fits in that system. Like another thing is, there is this politician, there is this Nigerian Professor Pat Tomi, schooled in US, lived over so many places. They wrote a playbook on how to make the world a better place, and his fellow classmates, then after their Ph.D. or wherever, went to their various countries. The president of Brazil, the one, they applied what they've learned. But he came to Nigeria, he couldn't even pass as a governor. So the people contexting with him didn't even pass through college or high school. So, but he understand, when you meet this man in a conference, you will have hope as a Nigerian. There are many of them like that, but they can't get into the system because what they know can't fit in that system. So that is it. We need to have a kind of use a kind of a Ken Weber's model, talk about an integral approach in the understanding of reality. He defines education as an integral approach. So when you look at integral, it means so much. It has to do with what I try to explain. You learn through your culture, talk about education through enculturation, and trying to integrate it. You come to understand your society through your cultural viewpoint. Most people, when they feel that they know, most people that feel that they know, throw away their cultural heritage. I'm always happy when you speak with the West about anything. They would like to show you what they brought from Africa. Like Edward, the first time I discussed with Edward, he showed me something he brought from Tanzania, and one artifacts that he brought from Kenya or Tanzania. Now you talk with Tom, after some time, Tom will still share his experience, and most people want to be here. So, but we need this system, and what are we going to do? Because the most confusing aspect of it is, as we plunge into the age of abundance. In abundance, there is scarcity. You know, we need to make things that works for people using what Chuku calls individually propelled growth.
Mhm.
So
Thank you.
through that model, we'll be able to have a better educational model that helps people to grow from to their worldview.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Madam Brenda. Madam Brenda, can you hear me? Madam Brenda. Madam Brenda, can you hear me? I'm sorry that she has internet problem. I'm really sorry about that. Mr. Tom, my questions to you that, uh, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, Madam Brenda, I think you
Yes, I
have,
can hear you.
yes, yes. I
Yes, I
think
can
what
hear
do you
you.
want? Yes, what do you want to share with us? Okay. Madam Brenda, can you hear me?
Yes. So I will keep my, yes, I can hear you, but I'll keep the camera off.
Okay, okay.
Just, yeah. So, so I just wanted to add to what Usinagachi was saying. I think, simple thing that needs to be done, it's a needs analysis. What is it that is required as far as education is concerned in a particular environment? And then based on those needs, then we need to say, these are the educational solutions that we can put in place to be able to meet those needs. Because often what happens is that we come up with a solution and then we try to just force it in. When you look at education, for example, here in South Africa, there's a lot of educated young people, but they're sitting at home. They've got masters, they've got honors, they've got some PhDs, but they cannot use them because there's no space for them in the employment, in the labor or in the workforce. One, they will be told you are too educated, therefore we cannot take you. If you are not educated, you don't know enough, therefore we cannot take you. You are at master's level, no, you need a bit of experience so you can get in. So there's always an issue, and this comes because in most cases, you find that the certificate that they've got is not necessarily fit for purpose. Somebody studies for 4 years at varsity, by the time they come out, that certificate or that whatever they learned is no longer relevant. There's new ways of doing things. Things are changing at a very, very fast rate. So we need to kind of change our education system in such a way that it is timely, it is fit for purpose, and it meets the needs of the society, it meets the need of the individual. Have to be something that they're passionate about, something they will not do because they get paid to do, because that's when you see the passion goes out the window. That's when you see people not being dedicated, people are not present at work. But we also need to focus on skills development, entrepreneurship, make sure that people are skilled to be able to be practical in what they do. And don't wait for people to finish matric or finish varsity. We can start this at basic education. Come with people. There are people that, somebody mentioned the fact that people are learning in different ways. I experienced this with my kids. In the year before COVID, or the 2 years before COVID, I was really, really worried because his marks were really going down. And I know this child can do more. And obviously, as a parent, you start to go hard on them and say, you need to do better, whatever. So when COVID came, and now they have to study online, now I was freaked out because I thought, over and above the fact that he's really not getting the concept, now he has to do this online. So he was being sent YouTube videos and he had to connect online. And come end of the year, and I see the report, he has done so much better in the COVID environment, in the online environment, than he did when he was sitting in the classroom having to sit in to listen to the teacher. So I think when we spoke about, when someone, it was said by the panelists to say that, sometimes it's not a one size fit all. Most people, differ in terms of how they consume these things. And I mean, I had the conversation with my kids and say,
Did we lose Brenda?
Oh, I'm really sorry. Yes, Mr. Edward. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say that Brenda is singing my song. Even here in the United States, we have a disconnect between the schooling system and the needs of the businesses and people for careers and so forth. Before our recession, because of the COVID, there were 1.6 million more job openings in the United States than there were unemployed people. And part of the problem is that the education system is often disconnected from the needs of the market, the needs for people for careers. In Switzerland, 70% of kids go through an apprenticeship system, not just for things like electricians and plumbers, which are very high paid, skilled workers over in the United States here, but for finance, for the pharmaceuticals, for things like this. So they have a different system that really seems to work. And Brenda's point also about the fast changing job and market because of exponential technology is important. There's a book called Robot Proofing, and this is one of the other things that we have to keep in mind is that education in the future is going to be a lifelong process. It's not going to be, well, I just learned this skill or this knowledge and then that's it. I can do that for 40 or 50 or 60 years. So anyway, Brenda's points are absolutely right on the mark. And I think as we look at the future economy, we have to look at how to connect educating and training with the actual needs of the market and the fact that exponential technology is going to change things very, very quickly. We need entrepreneurial minds. Workers have to stop thinking of themselves as workers. Every worker is an entrepreneur. Every worker is an investor in their own skills and their own knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Brenda, can you hear me? Mr. Tom? I think, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Like, what do you want to add this point? Because how Dr. Edward said that we have to minimize the gap in between industry and academia.
Absolutely. That's a great idea, is the apprenticeship mentor programs. But yeah, it's as we see, every individual has a different learning style, and every region has a very specific need for the young people specifically. And one thing AI can do is customize learning. And you also have things like virtual reality, which can bring in the whole heuristic model of learning to take people to places. So these trends are all heading in the right direction. And there's one silver lining to COVID. It has sped up a lot of these trends. And so it's very important to consider how AI can customize our learning style, our cognitive styles. And and it really does start at school. We've got to start this right now and early. We are in this lacuna because most teachers and professors and administrators are Generation X or above, and we had analog childhoods. We had to learn about the digital age, whereas these young people coming up now, these digital natives, are of this age. They grow up with screens and phones and supercomputers in their pockets, and so we are going to have a period of time where there is a gap. There's a period of time where our educational system needs to catch up, because right now, like Edward was saying, the sage on the stage model is really the manager above the assembly line model. The whole industrial age conditioned us to prepare us to work in factories, and now we've got to realize that's all of that is in entropy. With AI automation is taking over all those things. We need to get back to what it is that makes us human, and to customize. And now we have the tools to customize learning to everybody's individual learning style. And so I think about this. That's another reason for Earth Plexus is TAFS is very deliberate, and it's getting to know each country that it enters. And it's a slow process, and it's purposefully steady and slow and measured. But we need to get into other regions, and we need to start developing relationships, which is what Earth Plexus does. It can get to Malaysia or India and start developing relationships with meta-category organizations, because every region has its very own specific needs. As Sinikachi was talking about in Nigeria and his own challenges there. There's different challenges in South Africa, in the Congo. Every system has its own challenges that need to be understood. And it also creates, by doing so, by all of us getting together and focusing on our specific needs, whether it's a learning style, whether it's a governmental agency that we need to work around, by all of us coming together and working on what we know and what we need, there's a tensegrity that is created where the whole organization is held together by a tensegrity, by the tension of all of us going for creating what are our own needs. And from that will emerge meta needs, broader themes that we could all use. And and there's going to be developing areas that can't get AI customized education. But in those cases, we need to focus on educating them to monetize the data of their pure human intrinsic talents and that type of thing. So there's really, it's an urgent need, and we really need to get our heads around it. We need to shorten this gap between the educational system, which is still on autopilot from the industrial age, and bringing in this customized, individualized educational opportunities and processes. And that's what TAFS does. But right now we're focused on Africa, but we're migrating out, and we'll migrate out to the areas that Earth Plexus will scout and find the needs, find the real needs. And when we see needs aligned, if there's a need in South Africa that's similar to that in Malaysia, there will be now intra network opportunities there for networking and sharing ideas. So again, it's all about the tensegrity of all of us searching for what it is we need specifically for us. And by doing that, again, we create this tensegrity, this organization that's held together by all of us pursuing our specific needs, and then watching the global meta needs emerge from those, that we can cure a lot faster. And once we do that, it'll cure a lot of ills down the tree.
Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher. Yeah, sorry.
And I remember to unmute this time.
Yeah.
What I want to talk about is, how do we do this also at the very local level? Like, how do I impact education here in Phoenix, or how would you impact education at the local level in Malaysia or Nigeria or wherever you happen to be? And I think this goes back to looking for who all the stakeholders are that are involved in trying to move education forward. We're talking about education needing to move forward and to become more of what it needs to be for the 21st century. Who does that impact? Obviously, it impacts those who want the education, but it also impacts businesses that are looking to hire people. As Edward pointed out, there are businesses that here in the U.S. have to go offshore to be able to fulfill those needs. So those businesses are stakeholders. The government's a stakeholder too, not only being an answer to the people, but businesses want to improve their bottom line. They want to improve their own economic situation, as people do. Well, so does the government as well, because a thriving business environment also increases tax revenue bases for those local governments. So this is something that can build upon itself. Somewhere along the line with those stakeholders, hopefully you get that aha moment that education is important to society. I spent a few years living in Japan, And I really, really like the way they look at education. Education, from my experience when I was in Japan, was a foregone conclusion. Everybody will be educated. Uh, they are willing to spend the money on technology, Wi-Fi in classrooms, putting AI into programming studies. But that's what empowering the local culture with the value for education can do. So all these things are win-win-win-win-win situations when everybody is looking out for their own particular benefit. So that's what I mean by stakeholders. Bring all those stakeholders to the table. I taught for a few years at a for-profit technical school in another state. And we had regular meetings with business owners in the area that would be hiring the type of students that we were turning out. We gave them input into establishing what the curriculum would be, and then getting feedback from them on the type of students that graduated from our school that interviewed with them. So this is an example of how you can, at the very local level, drive these things forward. But I think making education fashionable, making education desirable, putting that emotional quotient into it is extremely important. But let's bring all the stakeholders together. Let's establish some goals based off of what each of the stakeholders wants out of this. And then comes the hard part, measuring those goals and reporting back and making corrections. Because in an age of exponential knowledge explosion, there's always going to be this lag between what we see developing and what we have now, no matter how good we make it now. This needs to be a continual process. We don't fix education and move on to something else. This will be something that will continue on as we move into the future.
Thank you. Thank you. We directly want to go for the concluding remarks. I want to start with Mr. Ugochukwu. I'm sorry that I think you joined right now, but what you want to add about this quality educations, as well as we want to go for the concluding remarks for today. Mr. Ugochukwu, can you
All
hear me?
right.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
can. Okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the awesome contribution in today's discussion at Waterland Forum. First of all, I will say that we need to make education to be addictive in this 21st century. Just like we have the technology that ruins our young minds with various amount of data and attention grabbing economy that used to deviate them from where they are focused. So if you can find a way to make education addictive through games like Pokemon and trying to like he rightly pointed out, delivering to each child um, the means of technology that can lead to access to information. Because the major lack in Africa here in schools and in the education of children is lack of the requisite technology to access the needed information that will enable them to improve their minds, like their counterparts in other parts of the world. So, if you, to be frank with you, the schools in Africa do not actually exist. The curriculum we have here is kind of outdated. That is not. There's a tragic mismatch between it and the what the 21st century economy requires. So how do we fix this? Is incumbent on us to find a way to ensure that these young minds have access to the infrastructure beyond the issue of quality education is the issue of quantity. Do they have the requisite infrastructure to access education? Here in Nigeria, for example, some students study under the trees in universities. It's quite appalling. Such environment can't foster quality education. So how do we get the right infrastructure that will enable these young minds to comprehend beyond assessing, but to comprehend information and utilize it for the benefit of humanity. And then, to make a final point, I would say that the 21st century economy requires that there is a huge investment that needs to be made with regard to education in general that goes beyond the issue of technology. I know we have the group that began around that actually 2011 that used the mantra of one tablet per one child, you know. But beyond that, we should find a way to have a revalorization in the moral values. As in beyond the infrastructure, beyond the technology, there should be a revalorization in moral values. Values like being studious, which is to be a student, is that word studious, being mean to study. If our students are being put on the path that if you can study yourself out of anything, people like Benjamin Franklin read their way into greatness. People like Barack Obama was raised by a single mom, but through education he was able to leapfrog that limitation that caged him. So how do we find that a revolution in moral values that students can have the value of decency, the value of respect for one another, for human dignity, for love, for compassion. So beyond equipping the brain, you only have to cultivate the heart. So quality education in this 21st century demands different parts, different frameworks that need to come together to ensure that the harmonious whole is actually formed for the growth and benefits of human race. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Brenda, can you hear me? Madam Brenda, can you hear me? Madam Brenda, can you hear me? Oshakati, can you hear me? Oshakati, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, yes. Like, can you add
I
some
just
concluding
sorry,
remarks for today?
I can hear you.
Yes,
All right, I can hear you.
yes, yes.
Well, the best concluding remark is, oftentimes uh, you go to an event and you ask someone, what did you, uh, what was your experience in today's event? They said so many things. It was awesome, but they may not be able to uh, explain exactly what they learned because of to the event was with a kind of inundation. So we said a lot of things. I wish to thank you for always organizing a thing like this. I wish to thank Edward Hodgins for always being available, the shoemaker, Brent Ehrman, and my boss, Tom Ross, and
Mhm.
the only blessed among men today, Brenda, and my friend Alo. So Alo pointed out something. Um, he talked about the the condition for which we learn. Alo was uh, my mate in during the time of my philosophical studies. So sometimes if you come to some libraries, you will see books stamped rejected from North Oxford University, rejected from Birmingham University. So those rejected books, they ship it down to Africa. They ship. So they use us as a dumping ground. So in African philosophies, when we started having this consciousness, a kind of awareness of African philosophy and personality and identity, we see those people who sent us books as Afro spoilers. They never, they don't mean well for us. But the light of uh, even know Harari, when my friend wanted to write uh, about singularity and stuff like that, he sent books, his recent books to us for us to read. And then the Shuba was kind enough. There are people who really want to gift out, they want to give you the best, not the rejected ones. Just like if you want to give someone clothes, give them the torn one, the one that no longer you don't like. there are people, when you want to make sacrifices, you give the best. Just like when we when I want to speak here, I always reflect, have a moment of reflection, have a moment of articulating my points. Don't just come here to say things before you give people academic poison. So we are talking about quality education. Education also has to do with sacrifice. It has to do with gifting. There are things that we do, like what some and most other people running NGO, what they are doing. They're trying to educate people freely. Like I refused to serve I didn't go for the um, National Youth Service Corps here in Nigeria, but my friend did that. Gochualo, he went to Western Nigeria, Northern Nigeria. He was teaching people, especially the Muslim. He was teaching them under the tree. Every day, he'll be teaching them. So it's all about sacrifices. And the kind of money allocated to these people for them to help the process. But they don't receive that because the leaders are not ready to sacrifice. They're not ready to allocate those things properly. So that is it. And NGOs are there to bridge the gap. If people want to invest here in Africa in the education sector and you send the money to the government, your money is gone. You are just joking. Hello, the money, it won't yield any results. So you need to give it to people who are responsible enough. I said it here, he gets gifted 50 something $1 million for the fight of uh, polio, and they shared it as a national cake in Abuja. And when he came to assess the process, he said Nigeria is one of the worst places to be born in the world. So we're talking about education. So you need to educate the leaders. That's why my friend Gochualo started his Sapitas Academy, where he trained leaders here in Nigeria, tell them what to do. That is education. Lead them out of ignorance, lead them out of presupposition, lead them out of the mindset that if you don't soil your hand, if you don't join the tyrannical group, you cannot become a better leader. Trying to sensitize them, give them a better model for them to become good leaders. So education is all round formation, but most especially character formation. There is no feel like an educated person that is not morally conscious. So you need to be a conscious person must be morally upright for you to really relate with people. We're talking about empathy here. So if you want to empathize, you must learn to be in the shoe of others. So that is the real education, and that is the real thing that people need to know about education. So the last thing I want to say there is emotional morals. So emotional morals is a key concept in education too. You know, like I said, I define education from the Ken Weber's viewpoint that's integral oral formation. Now, most leaders, because we are talking about leaders, there are people that educate through the way they live their life. We learn from all angles. So now you see people, they are too emotional, which makes them to take certain kind of policies, make certain kind of policies, lead very kind of life, write some kind of books, the misleading books. You see most people that are like this book of Machiavelli, Niccolo Machiavelli. Most people are not able to interpret that book because it very well because it lacks a kind of sensitivity. So education boils down to some of all these things. So we need to make our mind, prepare ourselves very well as we influence others in our thought patterns, what we've written down and all that to make sure that we have a better place to live as a species.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Edward. Yes.
Yeah, I'll just I applaud Osanakachi's point about character. We talked about education in terms of what it does to the economy, and this, of course, is important. We've talked about education about what it does to the individual. It allows individuals to have careers. It allows them to flourish as individuals. But the other thing is that with the education reforms that we're discussing here, what you're going to do, what you're doing is creating a new generation of individuals who are going to be leaders of their communities, who are going to be leaders of their civic organizations, who are going to be leaders in their governments. And that's where it comes from. If you look at Africa, for example, and I've looked at Africa for many, many decades, you see a big problem is corruption. The leaders are incredibly corrupt. If you look at the Index of Economic Freedom, their countries rate at the bottom of honest government. The Western countries have given billions and billions of dollars to African countries through the governments, and they just get the money gets stolen. Moral character is so important. The Greeks had a word called paideia. Paideia is the education of the person. Yes, it involves education in terms of knowledge. It involves education in learning how to learn, but it's the full education of the person. And I think that that's one of the things that you're going to get out of education, and one of the advantages, and one of the ways you're going to reap the benefits of this investment is in decades to come. In Africa, in Asia, and in other parts of the world, you're going to see a new generation of individuals who are empathetic, as Tom would say, who are concerned about their communities, their world, and so forth. And you're going to get a better citizenry. You're going to get better leaders. So I think this point about character and what I would call paideia is incredibly interesting. So know that it's not just that we're going to have great careers and we're going to have economic prosperity, which we all welcome. It's going to be a better society because you're going to have better people.
Thank you. Mr. Brentelman.
Yeah, so I've been seeing a number of commenters discussing assurance methods, measurements, indications, ways to kind of gauge the success of educational programs. And I think that one of the biggest hindrances in the United States educational model is that typically the quality assurance measurements and indicators are related to testing and to scoring on these different tests. And it really doesn't breed intelligence or facilitate, as Peter Ugochukwu mentioned, creating an environment where education is addictive, and it's an addictive process. I think that was a really strong point because if you look at the world around us, the amount of hours that people put on their, staring at a screen already to go on to social media and and all these other things. And at the end of the day, education should be a social process. There's tutoring, but most of the time it is, you're in a classroom and there's somebody sharing information and people are responding to it, and it's a social process. But it's not addictive. And the way that it's built up in the United States, as I was saying, is that they really try to instill this ability to memorize and recite things that they're being taught. And that's proof of, that's the framework, that's the quality assurance gauge that we use here. And it's nonsense, because it really doesn't show you any actual success. It's just showing you that this is what we're trying to do and this is how well we're doing it. But the relationship between what we're trying to do and how it relates to the world at large doesn't exist. And so I think that integrating new assurance indicators, quality indicators, such as how many people are able to get a job after completing these programs. I think that those are just really basic and simple things that you could tweak in the beginning of this whole thought process of developing such a program, and the end result would just be so much more powerful when you're actually considering this type of stuff. And so I just wanted to appreciate everyone in the audience for mentioning those points and bringing that to our attention to consider further. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. David Schumacher, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Yes, well, once again, thank you for hosting this on such a valuable topic as education and education in the 21st century. That's how I started talking about today. And I talked a lot about technology. And of course, I am a technologist. I think technology is a great way to help us solve these problems. But for concluding remarks, I want to say that's not the only way to go about these things. We're after common goals. We're after common goals on teaching people how to think, communicate, adapt, fan the human curiosity that's there, and instill this joy of learning so that people want to stay in the process. And that can be done one-on-one, and it can be done in small groups. And yes, it can be done with technology, but technology is not the only way to do that. So for me as a technologist, where I spent most of my life to say that, education is the main point here. And thanks again for hosting this valuable topic.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Tom.
Well, again, yeah, thanks, Sharif, for starting this off. Again, Earth Plexus, you can learn about it on Facebook under Earth Plexus. You can go to tomross.com, where I've got an infographic kind of outlining the general process that you showed earlier. And generally what Earth Plexus is, it's a scout. It's a scouting mechanism for TAFs. TAFs is all about education, and we're seeing that we're really focusing on that now with skills development, because that's the real need, especially in Africa with the youngest population on the planet. They need not just education, but very specific skills training to take advantage of some of these new innovations in the world. And so that's really what we're going to be focusing on. And I like to use the analogy, and you've probably heard this analogy in different ways, whether it's the Cook Islands or Easter Island, whatever it was. But the example I use is, when Cortez, when the Spanish galleons first arrived on the shores of the Aztec shores, in Central America. TAFs is right now really developing its a very precise, specific process of teaching and skills development, and it's really kind of evolving itself to be something. And I consider that to be like the Spanish galleon. It's a whole new process of training people up, and an urgent process. And the story goes that the Aztec people couldn't even see the Spanish galleons because they had no reference for these things. They'd never seen a large ship, and with these sails. So they literally, since they didn't have a reference for it in their reality, they couldn't see the ships. And it was not until the shamans of the tribes started to see the boats come in from the ships to carrying these conquistadors. So it's not that great an example, but the shamans could see the boats, and then they could start imagining what the ships were, and then they could start to see the ships and then relate that information to the people. So TAFs is this ship that we can't see yet, that regions can't see yet. Earth Plexus are the boats that are coming in to the shores. And what these 6 organizations that we will partner with in each region we go into, that represent 6 meta categories, which are education primarily, sci-tech, arts, media, business, politics, very specific meta categories. Those are the shamans of each region that we'll go into, because we will be able to work with them through Earth Plexus. Make sure that they're futurist minded, make sure they're progressive, make sure they're based on the principles of coalescence, and that they share the values of TAFs. And so that when TAFs is ready to come in with a full the whole host of opportunities and skill development programs, they'll be ready. So they'll be primed through Earth Plexus. So that's really the general idea. And of course, education is the first meta category. It's the most important thing and the most urgent need wherever we go. And so your exciting announcement of working with 1 million students, that's key, because that's really the urgent need, is to first of all, learn from these students what it is that they need, what their specific regions, where the challenges are, where the opportunities are, and so that we can find the organizations through Earth Plexus that will facilitate them best in that region, and then prepare for them to see the TAFs sailing into the shore. So just again, thanks again for starting this, and actually starting it as an educational topic, because that is important. And it's not only about technology, it's also about remembering what it means to be human. And regions that don't have high-tech access have a lot of very valuable data, and they need to be taught how to monetize that data, because there are organizations, businesses, governments that would value that raw human data in a very big way, and we need to capture that before it goes away. So again, thanks for inviting us on.
Thank you. So next week, Friday, we have. I think we are organizing a series on these Artplex issues and the quality of education. So I request all of the panelists. Hopefully, see you in the next week, Friday. So we are trying to reach millions of people. Already, many universities, school, college, governments from many countries. Even just today we finish a agreement with one of the largest Indian foundation, and they will work with 1 million students, and definitely we will work together on that particular project. So this is our objective, that we want to reach around 100 million people, and practically it's possible. Every day, at least 10 different universities we are connecting, and already many universities, they start to utilizing our content for their excellence centers, sustainable excellence centers, technology and innovation hub. They start to utilizing our content in many countries, even in USA, even in Europe. Many universities start to utilizing World Talent Economy Forum content. So hopefully we will go for quality education, and we will work together. I think we have to change millions of human lives, and with the quality of educations. And I think that you are ultimately the change maker who can change the human lives. Your knowledge, your experience, your everything is important for not only for the developing nations. I think that there are many peoples, even underdeveloped nations, developing nations, they need your help and your support. So quality education definitely is a number one priority. And now many students, they are struggling a lot, so we need a teamwork. So hopefully next week, Friday, we will discuss more on quality educations on the as well as on these projects. And we have that kind of networking and relationships around the government and the universities. Hopefully everybody will join in our movement, and especially our quality education movement. Thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. It's really great discussions, and I want to give special thanks to our audience. Thank you.